One.
Greetings and welcome to another episode of Dispatches from a World Gone Mad. I'm your host, award-winning investigative journalist Greg Schwartz here in the Bay Area, and with me as usual is my legal advisor Kevin Dean out there by a GameStop store in the Valley of the Sun.
Yeah, welcome back. Sorry we missed last week, but I think the frenzy of the economic shit show that we saw last week and a half, where the myth that retail investors, everyday people like you and I, have a new and equal access to the market was popped very ferociously, and luckily, I didn't lose any money over it, but it's because I never had any faith that the system would let us invest in the way that people were planning for it to unfold. But what do you think of what happened with Robinhood and these other apps colluding to limit retail investors' ability to buy stocks and hold hedge funds accountable for their short sales?
Well, yeah, it's just another example of the rigged economy, as Bernie Sanders talks about. The business model of Wall Street is fraud, and so they try to convince us that it's up and up, but we see it time and time and time again, and then the criminals get a slap on the hand. They pay a fine that sounds like a lot of money, but it's just a drop in the bucket to these people, and then they proceed on. And so, just again, another example of the rigged economy for the 1%.
I saw that both AOC and Ted Cruz were calling for an investigation and speaking with sympathy for the retail investors. Any thoughts on the weird constellation there as to these two being on the same side of one issue?
Yeah, well, AOC was absolutely right. I think Ted Cruz, who's just typically being an opportunist, and so she put him down pretty quick. Oh gosh, what did she say? Now I'd have to go back into her Twitter feed to find that. But I think she called him out for being the hypocrite that he was on some other issues. And so, yeah, I don't think, I don't know. Elizabeth Warren is calling for some stuff too, but will anything meaningful occur here? I wouldn't get my hopes up. And you said you didn't lose any money. Did you have any money invested in GameStop?
No, I thought about trying to get in for the short squeeze after the stock had gone up, but by that
Do
time,
you use Robinhood?
yes, I used Robinhood, and by that time, all the trading had stopped.
Aha.
And so,
so how long have you been using Robinhood?
For about 4 years.
Aha.
And that was the first time that I had been able to make a transaction. And I think a lot of people were stunned, not only at how they stopped trading on GameStop, but AMC, BlackBerry, Bed Bath and Beyond,
right.
I believe, Nokia, and a bunch of other stocks. This Naked company, which I don't think is the juice company, it's an apparel company. But the all stocks that were being discussed in a Reddit forum, Wallstreebtes. And I just gotta say the people who started that run on GameStop and Wallstreebtes are some really hilarious people that have a lot of guts, and people from all around the world joined an attempted an economic revolution where they were putting real money on the line, and a lot of people lost a lot of real money. And they're talking about it with a lot of humor on the Reddit forum. I don't think that I could be laughing and making jokes if I lost thousands of dollars, because it's not like I, like most of the people who lost the money on the GameStop stock, probably didn't have money to lose in the first place.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, I think that's why a lot of people are weary of playing the stock market. Oh, here's what she said. AOC on Thursday, this was from last week, accused Ted Cruz of trying to get me killed during the January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol and called for his resignation from the Senate after the Texas Republican appeared to agree with her on the need for investigation into Robinhood following chaos on Wall Street. Quote, I am happy to work with Republicans on this issue where there's common ground, but you almost had me murdered 3 weeks ago, so you can sit this one out, the New York Congresswoman wrote in a tweet directed at the Texas senator. Happy to work with almost any other GOP that aren't trying to get me killed. In the meantime, if you want to help, you can resign. And yeah, I think she had a pretty good point there. So Ted Cruz can suck it. And the GOP hypocrisy just never quits. Except there's that one guy I mentioned before on this show, Representative Adam Kinzinger from Illinois. He's actually trying to start a new PAC to campaign against the total insanity of the sort of QAnon GOP death cult movement. And so that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I've seen some coverage about AOC talking about sorry, I lost there for a second. AOC talking about hiding in the bathroom and people asking whether the rioters could be heard looking for her. And it's not beyond the realm of imagination that she could have been injured or killed by those people because they're insane and detached from reality. We'll talk a little bit about, I think we should end the show on the impeachment, but you said something about Bernie a few minutes ago. And we've had this discussion numerous times, and you talk about the political revolution and you put this aging white guy from Vermont on a pedestal like he's some kind of revolutionary, and you fail to recognize that he's nothing more than a sheepdog. So,
oh, come on.
So isn't Bernie Sanders a sheepdog for the party?
That's nonsense. This anarchist nonsense about that. Go ahead, state your case.
I was going to let you go first.
You're the one who's making this insulting accusation to all of us who have been passionate supporters of Bernie's political revolution over the past 5 years, which has in fact created a movement to push Congress to the left and to push the political conversation in this country to the left, far further left than it was, say, 15 years ago when we met, 10 years ago when Obama and Biden were coming in. And so they have changed the Overton window so much. So many of Bernie's progressive platforms are now part of the conversation for Democrats. And so this whole sheepdog allegation I reject wholeheartedly, and I will go into some more detail on that. But first, I would like to hear you state this argument.
Okay, so this argument resurfaced between us about a week and a half ago when Mike Alowitz, a witness and a survivor in a sense that he was there of Kent State Massacre on May 4th, 1970, he posted something on Facebook. He said, Bernie Sanders went to one demonstration in the early 60s, and then he took a 50-year break until 2014. So he skipped the anti-Vietnam War movement, the women's movement, and other critical social movements of his generation. Now he supports working people, but thinks it's okay to bomb them in other countries. He's for democracy, but he supports monarchies and Israeli apartheid. He's for government transparency, but wants Edward Snowden to stand trial. He's against racism, but his hero is the extreme white supremacist Winston Churchill. He's independent, but he's always supported the corporate Democratic Party candidates. He's against police violence, but thinks that police are a socialist institution. He voted for the Iraq War, against the Iraq War, but then he voted to fund it in the biggest war budget in history. He's battling the Washington establishment, but he's a lifelong professional politician. He was against Hillary Clinton, but then he campaigned.
That's a bunch of
Biden.
Far left cherry picking garbage.
Let me finish. He's for political revolution, but he crossed picket lines to applaud Trump at his inauguration. He's a democratic socialist, but he assures us that this will not threaten capitalism. And so he shepherds activists into the Democratic Party, where he can lead the revolution that will end Democratic Party politics in order to move a kind of socialism that preserves capitalism. Makes total sense. So that's Mike Alowitz's comment. And so what I want to
broadside attacks there that are not so
give you,
based in reality, I would say.
I tried to give you your time, and now I would have to finish. So what is a sheepdog? Well, I mean, Merriam-Webster defines sheepdog as a dog such as a border collie used to tend, drive, or guard sheep. And Mike's post points just that out, that's what he's doing. Let's consider the history of the Democratic Party. 1944 is like the genesis of the modern progressive Democratic Party. And if you look at what happened at the convention in 44, where you have backdoor big bosses picking Harry Truman over incumbent Vice President Henry Wallace. In 52, the sheepdog was Esta Kefauver. Excuse me if I mispronounced that. 68, you could argue that it was Eugene McCarthy or even Robert Kennedy. 84, 88, Jesse Jackson. 92, Jerry Brown. 2000, 2004, Al Sharpton, maybe Dennis Kucinich in 2004 as well, but definitely Dennis Kucinich in 2008. And in 2016 and 2020, it's Bernie Sanders doing exactly what Mike's talking about. Starting during the primary session, bringing in people in a social movement. So that's another thing you said. You claim that Bernie Sanders created a social movement that has pushed for these egalitarian economic changes. No, that's not true. There's a left in this country that's been trying to achieve this stuff at least since 1944 and dating back into the 1880s.
Sure, there's a left in this country, but your
Bernie Sanders
against
didn't
Bernie
create.
are
He
catalyzed this movement that has taken off over the past 5 years.
So that's where you have a fundamental misconception of power, right? Power doesn't come from politics. Power doesn't come from politicians. And
Bernie has recognized that and talked about how it's a movement, not me, us. That's why that was his slogan. And so your whole sheepdog theory is BS. Because please tell us.
So
please tell us.
Let me finish. I'm almost done here. So you point to things that Bernie says that recognize the power of social movements. All you're pointing to is how effective he is at wagging his sheepdog tail to attract where the power is and shepherd it into the Democratic Party. This, like I said, social movements accomplish change. There's two things that will bring about that influence the exertion of power in this country: money and social movements, people and money. And so social movements, we're starting to work on ways to collectively develop the money to run campaigns or to make broader changes and outside of electoral politics. But it's been social movements in this country and the world history that has caused governmental regimes to change, because you have to have a movement that gets to the point that government can't ignore it, or it will lose all of its power if it's going to have any kind of reform. The alternative to reform is real revolution. Political revolution, my friend, is an oxymoron. You can't have a political revolution and have the same power structures in place. That's what you've been brainwashed to believe by a sheepdog. And so the next thing you say to me is, well, Kevin, if you're not going to just get on Facebook and run your mouth about Democrats all the day long, how great they are, what are you going to do to cause social change if you're not going to be corralled into the Democratic fence by our glorious sheepdog? And so I got two answers to that. The first answer is the extent that we're looking to make change is issue advocacy. And if you look at the effects of issue advocacy, what has happened in the last 10 or 15 years under issue advocacy, the number one thing that we can point to is marijuana reform. That's not a political thing. That is about political power parties or specific politicians. We've seen marijuana reform because people, independent of some sort of political ideology, have come together and made that happen. Minimum wage reform, we're seeing it on a state-by-state basis on the ballot. Even in red states, are we seeing voters?
We've been talking about raising the minimum wage like nonstop for the past 5 years.
But it's actually happening rather than talking about something, Greg. That's what I'm saying. Talking about some
So you're saying,
political revolution.
What are you attributing to this to? What are you saying that it has nothing to do with
social movements and
movement?
Organizing people, and that has nothing to do with following.
Yeah, but no, hold the phone right there. When you're way off the map. You're way off the track because you're trying to accuse Bernie of being sheepdog, and then you're just what that means is
4 points, and I'll let you finish.
No, wait. I have to interject here because you're just going on and on and on with this bullshit, and it's making me mad. And so I have to interject.
Just let me finish my point, and I'm done.
Oh God.
Okay, so, and of course, then there's education funding reform that's going on, and criminal justice reform efforts that are going on. These are broad social movements that are coalescing around the country. And yes, we're seeing Democrats trying to tap into it. And we see that in Georgia, and we see Bernie trying to do it on a national level. Because a politician tries to tap into these social movement efforts doesn't render them the party's efforts or some sort of political revolution for democratic control. And so that, and then the third thing is you seem to have an unchecked or unquestioned belief in the supremacy of this colonist imperialistic government. And Bernie Sanders is an imperialist, and he doesn't have any thoughts on world peace, unlike the 2004 2008 sheepdog Dennis Kucinich, who was really anti-war. But and so I don't see putting our faith in a system that is predicated on stealing land from peoples in this country historically and then moving abroad to do it historically. I don't see the point in putting our faith in that. We need to put our organizational efforts in social movements, in non-traditional organizations that are participatory, that we can actually see our lives improve on, that promote ecological views of stewardship of the environment. And
there you go with your fantasy politics.
It's
again.
not fantasy politics.
You have completely skipped over the point here. You're trying to accuse Bernie of being a sheepdog because he endorsed Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden after he lost. That's basically the gist of your sheepdog thing, right? That he endorsed the centrist candidate after he didn't win the primary. Isn't that the basis of the bottom line on your sheepdog accusation? And because, please tell us, sir, what would you do if you were in that position? Are you trying to tell us that Bernie should have run third party or Green Party or independent? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that the reason why he ran was because he knew that the powers that be would never let him win, and that was to gain and garner interest from left social movements and divert their attention under the realm of the Democratic Party. Was it useful to the Democratic Party to do that? Yes, it's helped them win an election and help them respond in midterms and things.
That's bullshit. Bernie, the Democratic Party had to bend over backwards to stop Bernie from winning both times. They had to put their thumb on the scale throughout the 2016 primary, and then they had to pull that coup d'etat to consolidate.
Do you know what happened in 1944 Biden? At the Democratic National Convention when Harry Truman was elected vice president when FDR was on his deathbed?
What happened?
So, 1944, same kind of shit happens, right? And you're telling me in 2020...
What are you saying happened in 1944?
You're not familiar with the history of Democratic sheepdog?
Refresh my memory.
So, Henry Wallace was a big time progressive, and he was actually FDR's vice president, right? And at the 44 convention, he was all but guaranteed to be the vice president, and everyone knew that FDR was going to die, and we would have a new vibrant left progressive being president. Well, the Democratic bosses didn't want this, and so they orchestrated a bunch of backroom deals and required multiple votes and ballots, basically to deprive the sitting vice president, the incumbent vice president, from being renominated. So, and throughout politics history, it's replete with that, particularly as
all right. So yeah, I get your point. Please tell us, sir, what would your strategy be for a progressive candidate running who after they, what would you have done different? Please tell us if you were Bernie's senior advisor, what you would have instructed him to do.
I wouldn't have instructed him not to run in the first place.
So then what? Then there is no progressive candidate, and we just all have no choice but to have another centrist corporatocracy candidate. Great strategy. Then there's like no progressive movement at all.
If he's an independent, he could have run as an independent.
Oh, there it is. There it is. There it is. You're trying to say he should have run as independent. You know what would happen? You know what would have happened if he ran as independent last year? He would have split the left, and Donald Trump would be president.
What would have happened in 2016?
He would have split the left, and Donald Trump would have still been president.
So who won 2016? Right?
He would have won going away. You just want to hand power to extremist Republicans, and that's why you're a naive anarchist. You naive anarchist, you operate with your fantasy politics, and you're just ready and willing to hand power to extremist Republicans because you want to sit up on some soapbox and say that you're doing some progressive thing, even though it has nothing to do with changing the equation of power in this country.
Right. So, and this is what the people who've been sheepdogged say every time. It's the lesser of two evils now. We have to do it this way. It's
an unfortunate system with the bi-hegemonic duopoly. But what I want to hear from people like you is solutions, not fantasy politics. And so far, that's all you've offered is fantasy politics, no solutions. Yes, you do talk about doing some nice things locally. That's great. We all need to try to make local change as we can. But we're talking about national politics in presidential elections, and you're operating completely on fantasy politics.
Let's talk about what meaningful efforts are for someone who's in the sheepdog camp, right? You get on Facebook, you make some rants, you run a Stalinist control over a Facebook group, and
Stalinist control.
You justify supporting colonizing imperialist left-wing fascists.
Oh, dude, see, when you want to talk about colonizing imperialists, you're getting at like the whole foundation of our unfortunate society. Right. That's a large problem. But you're not offering any solution for changing that.
Yes, I am. I am offering a solution for doing that. I'm talking.
No, you're suggesting Bernie should run independent, and that we'd still have Donald Trump completing his neo-fascist destruction of American democracy. That's where your strategy would get us.
So you get stuck in this loop, the same loop that the sheepdog left has fallen into since 1944. They think that they have to put their efforts into believing in a corrupt system that is going to somehow save themselves. And they say, we just need more time. Well, you've had plenty of time since 1944. It's not working. It's not productive to believe that any politician is the holder of power and can lead a social movement, as you just started your conversation with. What's productive is engaging and building those social movements.
Yeah, and you know what's happened with Bernie? We've got AOC, we've got the squad. They have been building a social movement, and we now have a far more powerful progressive wing than we've had Xers. And so that has been happening thanks to Bernie. And so, but again, you say he should run independent, and then Donald Trump would be president, and we'd be going through the continuing neo-fascist destruction of what's left of American democracy.
No, that's not exactly what I'm saying. What I'm saying is
kind of what you're getting at.
For people like you and me, right? What should we be using our time and energy and efforts on? Is it getting worked up, talking and supporting Democrats on the internet, or is it actually doing meaningful social movement work? I think it's more meaningful to do social movement work and trying to build real life coalitions of people doing something that doesn't.
Yeah, and that's what DSA is doing, and DSA has grown leaps and bounds again, thanks to Bernie catalyzing this political revolution. And now we have far more of a movement than we had 5 years ago. You're just ignoring all of this with your anarchist fantasy politics.
So Bernie, who's not a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, has done more for the Democratic Socialists of America than any of the Democratic Socialists for America.
He has, because it's not about technicalities. It's about ideas and movements, as you say. And he catalyzed a movement, and it's taken off. And now, he always said it wasn't about him. And so again, it's about the movement, and he has helped foster the building of a movement that is much stronger, again, than anything that we've seen in our lifetimes. Remember when Dennis Kucinich ran, he wasn't even taken seriously as a candidate. He wasn't a contender. Bernie was like winning states. The Democratic Party was afraid of him. They had to bend over backwards to stop him. And so you are missing a whole lot here. And again, to me, the bottom line just keeps going back to you wanting him to run independent. Donald Trump would be president, and we'd all really be fucked.
So you always mischaracterize. I mean, you asked me for what kind of advice I would have given.
About getting down to brass tacks.
That's not the same thing as where should we focus our efforts, right? That's a separate question. I told you I'd rather not advise Bernie. I would rather be doing things other.
Yeah, but if you're gonna sit up there on your fantasy politics soapbox and call him a sheepdog, then you need to be able to come up with some alternate strategy.
$1 million worth of properties that he's managed to get as a career public servant. You know?
Oh, come on. That's such a propaganda attack. Dude is 79 years old, so he has a lake house. Big fucking deal.
How many lake houses do you have?
Dude, I'm not 79, and
If I would have cashed in on this GameStop thing.
Senators make some decent money. I mean, goddamn. I can't believe you're like going with that right wing attack.
When you're 79 unless your dad gives it to you. You know, you're not gonna have a lake house. I'm not gonna have a lake house.
No, I'm not probably ever gonna have any house. But again, I'm not a U.S. senator.
Exactly. He's a U.S. senator for how long? You know, and what has he done other than bring people into a doomed system as opposed to, you know, the benefit, the gain.
Wrong. You're just completely discounting the whole movement that he's brought. The growth of DSA, the growth of the squad, how we have a stronger progressive political movement in this country than we have had in decades, if ever.
So I think
you just discount all of this with your stupid sheepdog attack.
So you think that Bernie has caused a social movement to grow. I think that a social movement.
I said he catalyzed it.
Where he is. But where does that leave the right? You know, what is pushing the right now as to the future of their strange and demented form of populism that is continuing.
Yeah, and look at how they fear real populists like AOC and the squad.
Well, it seems like plenty of establishment Republicans are fearing right-wing populists right now, and they're doing it with. I mean, did Trump create that right-wing populism, or did he respond to it and ride it? You know, he might have fomented it, but it was a separate.
He fomented and exploited it, yeah.
Right, but he didn't create it. It wasn't because of him.
He exploited. Reagan. It's this big government boogeyman ever since Reagan that has been sort of building up this unfortunate movement that he fomented. And now, of course, the whole right-wing media propaganda machine with the Fox and the Koch brothers and goddamn 1996 Telecommunications Act. Thanks, Bill Clinton. There's all kinds of bi-hegemonic complicity in the corporatocracy race to the bottom. And so that is there's deeply entrenched institutional forces that we're up against here. And you are, again, your solutions are only, you're talking about some nice local things we can do. You still have no strategy for getting things done nationally.
Okay. So I think that if we organize movements, that gets things done nationally. That's the way that things have historically been done nationally with social.
Well, that's what DSA
Bernie Sanders
doing. Are you a member of DSA?
No.
Are you a member of DSA? And if not, why not?
Because I don't believe in electoral politics as a social movement.
But they're not just about electoral politics. They do all kinds of organizing. That's why DSA kicks ass. They are all of the above. They work on electing progressive candidates to Congress to move the Democratic Party left, but that's only part of what they do. They do all kinds of organizing on local issues all over the country. You're not on Twitter. You don't spend much time on the internet, it seems like, because you're completely oblivious to this.
I am a founding member of the Abraham Lincoln Caucus of the Progressive Republicans.
What the hell is that?
So it's a caucus of the Republican Party that focuses on progressive causes, and we as
There
Abraham.
is such a thing. Where
So yeah,
this
the
is
founding
some kind of
member.
Arizona thing?
Yeah, it's largely an Arizona thing at this point, but it could become national. It's not to be confused with the Lincoln Project, which is more mainstream Republicans, just
Right wing grifters. Yeah.
But so I think given my experience with seeing the Republican Party just capitulate to whatever populist frenzy is before it, it makes sense that
Oh, populist, you mean?
right. But I think that when you look at issues like minimum wage and marijuana reform, people who identify as Republican because of their belief in right wing populism, if given a forum where they could identify with certain positions, could accomplish it. But the fact is that Democrats have such a long history of the same old crotchety people running their party that
Well, both parties do. That's what
that
we're
populist
dealing with, the forces of old and evil, as Hunter Thompson so lucidly stated back in the Vegas book. These are not easy solutions. We're fighting the same forces that they were back in the 60s, except, I mean, yeah, I like to think we've made a little more progress since then, although, yeah, not nearly enough, obviously.
See that, and that's why we can have these conversations, because I think that at the heart we have a similar analysis as to where the evil lies and the need to overcome it, and we just have a bit of a disagreement as to what the most effective use of our time is. Even though I am a registered Republican, a member of the Abraham Lincoln Caucus of Progressive Republicans, I largely vote for whomever the progressive is on the candidate.
You're only a registered Republican to try to throw a monkey wrench into the crazy Arizona politics.
I believe in limited government, freedom, and the Constitution, and so.
Oh Jesus! Now you're citing those libertarians, and that fits in with your whole anarchist manifesto. Where again, it comes back to the same question we've been arguing about for 15 years. Who's going to pick up garbage, dude? In your anarchist libertarian utopia.
Okay. So if you want an education on the distinction between libertarians and anarchists, that'll have to come on another episode, including the idea of mutual aid and assistance versus obligatory.
Yeah, but how do you actually enforce that? It's a great idea in theory.
Okay, so now you're asking big level questions about culture.
Yeah, well, we're having a big level conversation, aren't we?
On Terence McKenna's views of culture as well.
Now that is some deep stuff. I think we probably should save that for a whole nother episode.
Yeah, so I think we should just close with a brief discussion as to what we're seeing moving forward with the impeachment trial.
Okay.
Kind of a split in the Republican Party, where you have what appears to be some basically level-headed discussion as to fiscal conservative nature of Republicans. Now they're not in control of the government; they're fiscal conservative.
Oh, the deficit.
All right, so they're concerned about stimulus funding, and the Democrats.
And you're only ever concerned when they're not in power, right? The hypocrisy is just astounding. And so we're seeing good signs with Biden met with those Republicans, but he's saying, no, we're not going to come down. And it's just so disingenuous of these Republicans saying, oh, Joe Biden doesn't want to do bipartisan work on the stimulus because he doesn't accept our lowball offer of $600 billion. No, and get the hell out with that crap. We need to go big, and these people are just so disingenuous and so.
Speaking of disingenuous,
unaware.
Is Joe Manchin a Republican or the senator from West Virginia? And what about
very good question?
Senator from Arizona. I mean,
he's horrible.
Did they run on the Republican ticket? Because it's like it, right?
Yeah, he's awful, and I mean that's West Virginia for you. Even the Democrat is a Republican, and so I don't know what to do about him. What's that?
And Arizona is not much different, you know.
Yeah. Well, who are you? Who are your?
Kirsten Sinema, who refused.
Oh, she's the other one who didn't want
to.
Yeah.
sides with Republicans more often than Democrats.
Yeah, yeah. That's why you should run for office, dude. And then you can help. First, you should run for like city council or state legislature or something, and then you could go. You could rise up and help change things in Arizona.
You seem to be listening to a word I say. So
I believe in all of the above strategy, right? It doesn't have to be one or the other. We can walk and chew gum at the same time, as Bernie likes to say. And so, you can organize locally, and then you can also have your eye on the big picture. And that's what we need to do. And that's why I love Democratic Socialists of America, because they're all about organizing on local issues, but they're also all about electing progressives to Congress to move politics to left in this country.
Do you want to end with any discussion on QAnon and the Republicans and whether or not that's a dead deal by now, or?
Well, I think most of them are ready to admit that QAnon was bullshit. However, we still have the Trumpism, the disconnect from reality with people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, this woman. Now, I don't like when they try to throw her 9/11 thing into the mix, because believing that 9/11 was an inside job is not something that should be disregarded as fringe. However, the whole Jewish space laser thing, that's just so ridiculous. And of course, she has been pushing the fringier aspects of QAnon. And the fact that this woman even got elected in the first place is an extremely sad commentary on this world gone mad that we live in. And so, yes, she absolutely. And the fact that the Republicans committee positions, because they can't admit that she is Looney Tunes, because if they admit that, then they're turning off their cult member base that they're still afraid to alienate. And that's the real problem in the GOP death cult at the moment.
And I think, and that's the difference that I'm trying to make, the distinction that's trying to make between leftist populists being sheepdogged into the Dems and still being forced to swallow a corporate imperious pill, whereas the right wing.
Who's swallowing the corporate imperious pill? We voted for Biden because we wanted to defeat Donald Trump, not because we have any passionate affection for Joe Biden. And so now we're going to try to push him to the left. And this is not like when Obama came in. There is no honeymoon. We've got lots of big problems. Everyone knows it. We've got more allies in Congress, thanks to Bernie and DSA. And so we're going to get a lot more done this time. And I think Joe Biden, he realizes that we cannot just turn the clock back 10 years. That's not going to work. We got a lot of problems. We need to go big. And so I feel like you're stuck in that mindset of thinking that we can't affect any change and it's the same old, same old. And sure, we need to be wary. We need to be watchdogging the Democrats. But you're just so cynical, and it bugs me. Yeah.
Is it really cynicism when it's rooted in 60, 80 years of reality, right? I mean, it's not really cynicism. It's just looking to the past for markers to establish what will happen in the future. And so I don't know that it's cynicism.
It gives back to when you try to say Bernie should run as independent and let Donald Trump win again.
You kind of trapped me, walked me into that, putting me in the advisor, right? I was trying to make that point that we shouldn't be putting our efforts into engaging and participating in those campaigns in the first place. But
but if we don't defeat Republican extremism, for starters, then we're going nowhere fast. Then we're going towards Mad Max Fury Road. That's where we were going for the past 4 years. And so people like you need to understand that we've got to start there. And
what has us in the position where we have to be genuinely concerned about Republican right-wing populist lunacy? What has us there is the ability of those people in some kind
of the corruption of our whole political system.
No, it's some kind of crazy ass social movement that they've been able to form where they've co-opted their party and taken control of it, right? And And so
Yeah, because they don't care about
been
anything except power.
uncompromising, because they've been uncompromising, and they've been able to
They have no morals.
so it's but so they've been able to have a movement that takes over a political system. But when the left makes such a demand, the moderates among them say, no, that's irresponsible. What you have to do is let these elite mainstream folks lead the way. Here, grab a hold of this sheepdog's tail and follow them under the Democratic tent. That's why we're in this problem in the first place, is because we've had a social movements that have been shut up and rendered ineffective by sheepdog politicians. And that's why we have the rise of fascism on the right, and it being an existential threat to this country in the first place.
We have the rise of fascism on the right because of capitalism. Okay. And so, yeah, and capitalism, the corrupt capitalist control of both parties is what's brought us here to this, with this race to the bottom. And but then we have someone like Bernie trying to stop that, and they had to bend over backwards to stop him. And so again, I feel like your argument is just really missing the big picture here with your fantasy politics.
Well, we'll see what happens over the next week or two with the resolution of this stimulus debate, and if the Democrats being in power,
yes, please,
meaningful,
stimulus,
or if they're going to capitulate to the Republicans and knock out.
No, I think we're going to get that 1.9 billion stimulus, and then that's just phase one. Then we're going to need another stimulus when that one, obviously this fucking pandemic isn't going away anytime soon. And so we're still probably not going to have, we still have the restaurant industry for business, for instance, and hospitality and music industry. These things are only going to be coming back piecemeal. And so we're going to have a lot of people still out of work that are still going to need massive stimulus. The Democrats know this. It's the Republicans who've been blocking it. And so, yeah, let's see what they can do, because now with all three branches of government, time to get things done. And with Bernie as chairman of the Senate Budget Committee, I am optimistic that he is going to get things done. And then I am going to remind you repeatedly of all the things that Bernie is doing for big us.
Well, I'll welcome such a reminder if those things actually happen. Let's pay close attention.
Okay, I think that's going to do it for this episode. And so please like and subscribe to our YouTube page and share this with your friends if you like this kind of political debate. And we'll see you next week on Dispatches from a World Gone Mad.